Hey guys, welcome back. I'm glad you're here today. This video, I'm going to be making some Mokume Gane. I've uh, been working on it the last couple of days. In the end, it comes out in the video. You're going to see probably more of my failures than anything, being this piece and spraying some hot molten brass on me. Kind of getting in a rush, and this thing's not working out the way I wanted them to. But I kind of buckled down, repeated the process, fixed the things that I needed to fix, and this came out. Very solid layer of, or a very solid billet of copper or silver, nickel, brass, and copper in alternating layers throughout the billet. So, glad you're here. Hope you enjoy the video. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to cut a couple of strips, or a strip out of each one of these materials using the plasma cutter. I have at one point in time stacked all three together, cut it with the plasma cutter, and that was no good. It actually welded on the one side, so I'm just going to cut each strip off individually, see how that works. Not even hot, just a little bit right on the edge. Damn best way to cut that out, that's for sure. Okay, so there's our three strips of each material. What I'm going to do now is kind of grind off that bit of the slag, and then probably do a little bit of sanding, hand sanding now, just to clean it up a little bit, and then cut it into probably 1-inch strips. So I have 36 total layers, 12 inches length. And then we'll be hand sanding, polishing each and every piece before we clean it up, and then throw it into some acetone and make a pressure plate for it. But certainly made quick work of that with the plasma cutter. Alright guys, so in here I've got our silver, nickel, copper, and brass soaking in some acetone. I've polished them, sanded them down to about 400 Scotch-Brite, just try to get them as clean as possible. Put them in the acetone, make sure we get all the oils and all the other stuff of that off. What I've done off camera, these are two plates of 304 stainless steel. They are thick. About 12 millimeters, so almost, what would that be, almost ½ inch thick, so very sturdy, beefy. These are 7/16 by 14 by 3-inch. Kind of just put a little tack weld on just to make ease of assembly a little bit better. Washers and nuts to go with that. What we'll do now, I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes, and I'm going to use some whiteout on these pressure plates to prevent that from sticking once it kind of gets up to temperature and wants to start forge welding together. Hopefully it'll make it a lot easier to get off. So I'm just going to quickly paint on some some of the white out. No, I am not a painter. I'm just gonna let those dry, set that aside, and then we'll start pulling out these little pieces and stacking them up together. Kind of get a shop towel and kind of dry them off a little bit each time I pull one out. I can't put my gloves in the acetone because it pretty much dissolves them immediately, so I'm gonna grab a pair of pliers to be able to pull out each piece. I originally said I was going to do 36 layers, but when I went to cut these off, I didn't like just having a 1-inch long piece here, so it looked a little goofy. So I went ahead and went with 2-inch long pieces, so that we'll have a little more mass to work with, a little less layer count, but we'll see how that turns out. If this turns out at all. I've tried to do brass in Mokume Gane before. I've not tried nickel silver. So we'll see how this goes. Basically, the theory is with enough pressure you can kind of fuse different metals together with time and temperature. Having these pressure plates and high enough pressure, and then we're going to increase kind of what the pressure plates can do by adding heat to the mix. And so we're going to give it a go and see if we can get it up. Melting point of brass is about 1700 and 1610 to 1720. I'm going to throw it in my heat treat oven and kind of run that temperature up to about 1700. It's going to fluctuate up and down a little bit. Leave it in there a while for it all to soak together. Hopefully with enough pressure from these plates and these bolts forcing this down together, we'll get fusion. So I've got one piece of copper that's got a little nick on it from the plasma cutter. I got a little sloppy with my handwork. That's going to be the first one that I put down. So basically I'm just going to stack these now, and I'm just going to alternate between copper, nickel, silver, and brass. I'll kind of get it squared and centered in this as best I can, and then we'll throw our other plate on the top of it. Some washers to kind of help spread that load a little bit, and then our nuts to really kind of crank down on it. And then I'll go around with my wrench and make sure. Whoa. Okay. Strange power surge. So there we go. We've got it centered in there very nicely, and I'm just going to kind of start snugging down on it, just kind of alternating corners. And And I'm going to really kind of crank down on this thing. I want to try and get as much pressure on it as I can. Okay. There's our billet under quite a bit of pressure from this plate. Now, the only thing we have to do is get this thing super hot and see if that'll forge weld together. Probably gonna, off camera, I'm gonna snug this down just a little bit more just to get a mechanical grip on it and really put the pressure to it. So next we'll head over to the oven, start warming this thing up. Alright, so I've got that tightened down. One other thing I forgot to mention earlier, I'm going to use a little bit of flux. So this is borax and just denatured alcohol. I think you can use kerosene as well. Just kind of make a slurry. And then I'm just going to kind of paint it around all these edges. Kind of get a good slathering around, and that should help kind of prevent any oxidation and such in down inside of there. So there we go. Alright, so here's my new heat treat oven that I just finished building. Little Inkbird PID controller. I've got it set at 1375 right now. It's coming up to temperature pretty quickly. So as soon as we get there, kind of let it level off for a few minutes. Then I'm going to throw in this Mokume Gane billet in the plates, and then kind of start ramping that temperature up to get around right around, I don't know, 1675. I'm gonna try that and let it sit there and soak for a little while. I may go a little closer to 1700, just kind of play around with it. Just kind of, I don't really know. This will overshoot its temperature setting by a little bit, but then it kind of regulates itself over time and stays fairly consistent. And I still need to do a little configuring with the auto tune and some of the parameters, but I'm quite happy with it thus far. Alright, I'm gonna open this thing up now and throw it in there. It's up to about 1372, and this is kind of the way these things work. Is you set a temperature and it kind of runs up, and then you set an auto tune feature that kind of helps it learn. But we're there, so let's throw this thing in there. Alright, so temperature's kind of coming back up. It's firing the coils again, but it's gonna start drawing some of that heat out away from the oven, getting into that metal. Kind of once it gets up there and levels out a little bit, I'm gonna just start bumping the temperature up. So we'll see. All right, we're 1475 now for 10 more minutes. I'll let that run up to 1475, and then I'm going to bump up the temperature another 100 degrees. So. Okay, so let this keep going, and I'm not even sure if you can see that, but one more time, then we're going to let it soak. Well, this is the problem with new homemade stuff. Something burned out in my heat treat oven. I'm pretty sure it's where I have the wires connecting to the coils inside. Got up to 1500 and change, and then the temp started plummeting. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna light the forge, kind of start getting it hot. Pull this out, put it in there, and see if we can do it that way. Old-fashioned, I guess. Alright, so the forge is up to temperature. I've got the front burner off and just the back two on. I'm trying to keep the flame directly off of the billet. Pull it out of the oven now and see if we can get it up to a nice orange, orangey yellow color without melting anything. Some of that brass just started to melt, so I know we're up to 1700 and change. So see it start to squeeze out of there. I'm gonna kind of call it quits at that point and just let this thing cool down slowly. Just kind of let it cool down real slow. See what we get. All right, so let it cool down a little bit, but gonna give this a shot. I'm gonna put it back in there, get it back up to that same kind of orange yellow glow, and take it over to the anvil and kind of give it a few light blows. I just want to make sure that I'm getting everything in there compressed as tight as possible. Go over to the anvil and get ready to bang away. Quite a bit of brass kind of melt that time. I'll let it get a little too hot. Let it cool for just a second, and I'm going to give it a couple more blows. Oh, shit, it's hot. Should have let it wait a little longer. I got molten brass everywhere. Okay, so here's our billet out of the plates. Did have a piece, two pieces, obviously delaminate on me. You saw the molten brass explosion. Completely my fault. And I should have had my leather apron on, and I would not have burned a hole through my pants. But that aside, it feels like a solid piece. It's going to take a little work to grind these edges and stuff like that off. To do so, obviously here's where the brass delaminated from. This one is obviously copper. I guess this is the nickel silver. So the copper and the brass obviously stuck together on this one, but it's still really hot. But let this cool down, and then we'll kind of sand it, grind away some of this flux and such, and kind of see what we have at the end, and then probably throw it in the forge and kind of start working it again. Maybe make some patterns on it, some divots and file work or something like that. All in all, again, it feels like it was successful, but time will tell. So I've got it sanded down, and you can see the layers in there. I do think there are a few delaminations. How deep they go, I'm not certain. Most likely due to me hitting it when the brass was still molten. I should have let it cool down quite a bit more. But what I'm going to do now is throw this in the forge and start kind of drawing it out, getting to a little flatter. That's I don't know dimensionally what size it is. It's 3/4 of an inch on one side, half on the other, and it's probably where I where I lost a couple of the layers, and the other would be where that first hit that squeezed out all that brass occurred. So I'm gonna throw it in the forge and just start kind of working this down and see if we can get to some kind of usable shape for a knife bolster or something along those lines. But it looks really cool. Hope that's showing up well enough on video. But you can see all three different metals. Alright, so this here is that first piece that I made and you guys saw. Got it too hot, did it in the forge. Brass melted and exploded everywhere. Inclusions, delaminations, I don't know. I mean, there's some solid parts to it, but it's not all that usable. So I got my heat treat oven back up and working. One of the wires had burned out, and I went ahead and repeated the process, same pressure plates and all that, and was able to do that. And this feels very solid. It doesn't, I don't know how to really describe it. What I'm going to do now is just go over to the belt sander and kind of clean off some of this scale from the flux and kind of see if everything holds together. But I mean, it feels tight and doesn't want to come apart, at least in my hands. So I'll go clean this up and show you guys what we got. Alright, so I've got it kind of sanded off, polished up, and you can see the different layers. Everything looks just as solid as can be. I would say it's a success. This top edge right here is just where it shifted in the pressure plates, and I just didn't sand it all the way back off of that. It's not a delamination or anything in there. It's solid all the way through on the rest of them. So very, very cool. Now I've got to figure out what to do with this. I want all the different colors to show up. The layer count's not very high, so I'm considering, kind of rounding it, giving a twist, and then flattening it. I don't know. A lot of work went into it, so don't want to screw it up at this point. But hey, I like that little pressure plate, and then the heat treat oven seems to work really well. The first attempt was a failure, but that's mainly due to me. Had my oven worked right or whatever, I think it would have turned out just as well had I left well enough alone. But very cool. If you got any ideas of what I can do with this, what I should do with it, leave them down in the comments below. Appreciate you guys watching, and as always, y'all have a great one. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again, guys.